Hello, welcome to another episode of Inside the Huddle. Today is Saturday, January 18th. It is Divisional Round weekend. Today is episode 47 of the Inside the Huddle podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure to please like and subscribe for those tuning in. Another week full of playoff football. My personal favorite week of the NFL season. You've got better games, better, closer matchups than wild card weekend. And you've still got two games on Saturday and two games on Sunday. Our final weekend with football on Saturday until next season, with obviously the NFC and AFC championship weekends coming up on Sunday next week before the Super Bowl 2 weeks after that. So lots to discuss today. DiMari, how's it going, man?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Two teams we're going to be watching that we definitely expected. Band team, one of them, Rams being another one. Just, I think we called that perfectly seeing those two. But yeah, like you said, these are the games seem a lot tighter, a lot more important. I know you can say it about every game, you can say it about the wild card round or whatever the case is. But these are the ones like where you win and you're almost there. You got one more to go once you get past the divisional round. So I'm excited. Like I said, I am excited for that Commanders-Lions game. I'm not going to lie. I know a lot of people are kind of leaning Lions Super Bowl, but it's going to be some good games today. I also think that Texans and Chiefs one's probably a lot closer than some may think, but it's going to be some good football today.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Hopefully we get, three close game or four close games. Last week, wild card weekend was a little bit of a clunker in a way. You had a lot of blowouts last week, and kind of to be expected a little bit in wild card weekend when you get the 7-2 matchups. It's a lot to ask for a 7 seed. Although the Broncos did open up the game looking like they might actually go into Buffalo and win, but then I think kind of as many expected, talent eventually just takes over, experience just takes over in that second half and kind of run away with it. And Green Bay, the whole game from the right off the kickoff was kind of fighting their way back the whole game. It was an uphill battle. So even though they had some chances and it was close at one point, it was at least a game in the third and midway through the fourth quarter. You kind of knew in the back of your mind it was going to be really tough. So the Washington Tampa game was by far the best one of the weekend. But we're going to start today with a team that exited in the wild card round and a team and their quarterback and what the future holds for him. And that is the Minnesota Vikings. They lost 27-9 on Monday night against the Rams. So a 14-3 season that included a potential NFC North title if they would have won against the Lions in week 18. And then obviously, could have potentially had the 1 seed in the AFC. That goes from that potential to they're now sitting home here in the second weekend of the playoffs following a disastrous performance on Monday night. And it is now kind of a reminder of where the Vikings are at with a quarterback situation, right? We've talked about so many of the different possibilities with Sam Darnold and what the future could hold. We talked about him all year long where, they were playing really well. He was playing really well. How far in the playoffs would it have to take for him to come back? If they go on and win the Super Bowl, it feels like you would have to bring him back. It feels like you can't just let a guy that just won the Super Bowl for you walk for nothing. But then there was also the other side of it. If they get bounced in the first round of the playoffs, then what happens to him? And it's safe to say they lost on Monday because Darnold looked terrible and the offense couldn't move the football. It reminded you a lot of, and I know this might come off as jokingly, but it's the truth. They reminded you a lot of Sam Darnold on the Jets. He just looked straight up lost. He was holding on to the football for way too long, which has been a big problem for him throughout his career. He took 9 sacks. Most of those were him just holding on to the football. Felt like the primetime lights got to him. So I guess before we talk about possible destinations, what next for him, what are your thoughts on him coming out of that game and what you saw on Monday night?
Well, before I even get to that point, I did kind of want to start off with, I don't know if you've seen it on Twitter, but for the folks complaining about, this is why the seeding is completely messed up and why is a 14-3 team on the road and, Tampa shouldn't have gone to home playoff game. Win your division. I think it's just that simple. I mean, complain and want the NFL to change the format that's been going on forever. A 14-win team went on the road and lost. Like, at the end of the day, if they'd have played in Minnesota, they'd have played in LA, they played in Arizona. Like, you got to handle business. You got to win. It's just that simple. Just something I want to speak about, because it's almost like you see, like, it seems like the new age football fans come onto Twitter to start complaining about things and want to see things change. But away from that, I was very disappointed. This was a team that we both thought Week 18 would march into Detroit and win that football game, you know, get the 1 seed. And as good as they've played all year, just to get into that game, it's kind of like they forgot what got them there. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison.
Yep.
9 sacks at the end of the day, you know, is acceptable. And this Rams defense is a defense that wasn't that great, you know, throughout the year, had some ups and downs. Obviously got better towards the end of the year. But as much as we want to blame Donald, you know, 9 of those sacks, and it could have been a first sack, it could have been him holding on to the ball too long. It could have been his offensive line just completely getting destroyed. You're not winning the football game if you've given up 9 sacks. So as far as the Vikings, I mean, it's unfortunate. I mean, at the end of the day, we can probably say, actually, we both thought they weren't even going to make the playoffs. We thought maybe they win 7 games, you know, this year, and Darnold was that bridge QB until McCarthy gets back. So they do deserve props. They deserve credit. But if we're trying to look for next year, might be a bad take on my part, but I think you got to bring Sam Darnold back, because at the end of the day, and this is me coming from a Cowboys fan side of it, you can't do the whole entire playoff loss on the quarterback. Again, the quarterback getting sacked because receivers aren't getting open. How's the offensive play call? How's your offensive line? There's so many different factors. So I don't want to just come on here and say Sam Darnold was this and Sam Darnold that. He's the reason they lost the game. At the end of the day, I mean, there's 10 other men on that field when it comes to the offense side of the ball. None of them showed up to play. The Vikings, I mean, he gave you guys a chance. I think you got to roll with him going into next year. I think that's a smart option. You let J.J. McCarthy kind of continue to rehab and learn some things from Sam Darnold next year. And then, you know, we get into week 7, week 8, whatever the case is. Depending on how things are looking, you make the switch. But I do not think they should just give up on them as we go on next year.
Yeah, and I'll just start off with your first point there. I agree with that, with the whole playoff format. And look, I mean, the Vikings obviously became the first 14-3 team to lose in the wild card round. But nothing, again, not trying to like make fun of the Vikings, but we've known this for a while now. The Vikings they've been torturing their fan base with early playoff exits for years. I mean, they lost to Daniel Jones at home. And I think that's the perfect way to combat the whole argument of, oh, the Vikings should have been home. Well, yeah, they were home 2 years ago, and they lost to Daniel Jones and the Giants. Jones now on their roster. So, and I will also say this, and obviously the California wildfires have been horrible, and hopefully everybody's okay, and hopefully they, you know, continue to get resolved out there. But you also just look at everything that the Rams had on their mind going into this game outside of football. Like, they went from having a home game in front of their home crowd to, you know, devastation in their state, in their city, to having to move to Arizona and basically on like a 72-hour notice. The Cardinals, they were using their practice facility. So for the Vikings too, just adjusting wise, it was still a road game for them. They were either going to have to travel to LA or they're going to have to go to Arizona. So it was still a road game for them. For the Rams, it went from being a home game to, wow, we have to kind of adjust here. They got, you know, multiple team planes to transport family and all that stuff into Arizona. It went from, you know, basically turning the Cardinals facility into their own facility. I don't know if you saw, but Puka Nakua's locker, I think, with Marvin Harrison Jr.'s, I think it was. So that, like, that's how quick they had to adjust. So you would think the Rams going into that game would affect their preparation, affect them more than the Vikings, because it was still a road game for the Vikings in a warm climate still. Like, nothing changed for them. So yeah, I think the whole thing, it's got to be taken away. At the end of the day, you got to take care of business, and yeah, then go win your division. And the crazy part is the Vikings had a chance to win their division. They played the Lions on Sunday night, game 272. They had a chance to take care of business, and they didn't. If they would have did that, we'd be talking about the Vikings playing the Commanders today and a totally different story with this season and a totally different outlook on this Vikings team right now. So that's just the way it is. In terms of the whole Darnold thing, for me, I just think it's tough to and we all understand that obviously the season he had and what he was able to do. And I was, happy for him and all that stuff, rooting for him. He finished the year. You look at his numbers overall, 5th in yards, 5th in touchdowns, 14th in QBR. The interceptions were a little bit up, but that's also just the type of quarterback he is. He's going to turn the ball over. I think we've sort of gone to that point in his career where his best seasons, he's going to throw, he could throw this year. He could throw 30 plus touchdowns, but he's going to throw 10, 12, 13 picks. That's just kind of the way it happens. There are still those decisions that make you scratch your head. He's got some of those aspects of his game that haven't quite been cleaned up in his career that probably won't be. I just think from the Vikings perspective, they're going to have a really hard time, I think, looking back at this season and avoiding what happened in those last 2 games, including the Lions game where he completed under 50% of his passes and had some really, really poor throws. I mean, he missed Justin Jefferson. I believe it was Justin Jefferson wide open in the end zone on one of the plays. They got to the red zone a couple times, couldn't convert. There was a couple open receivers that he missed. So I think the Lions game was all on him, or a lot of it was on him. Like guys were open, he just wasn't hitting them. And I think I do agree. Like the offensive line wasn't great. There wasn't a ton of guys getting open against the Rams. The Rams just, for being honest, the Rams kind of outcoached the Vikings a little bit. Yep. They were all over them, especially in the secondary. So I don't know. I just think Kevin O'Connell, even if, who knows what happens if they would have won last week, but I think Kevin O'Connell likes J.J. McCarthy so much and he wants to work with him so badly and he's ready to kind of just move on from this 1-year Darnold thing that I don't think he would return. And I feel like it could be best for both sides because in a way you then maybe end up with a situation where, okay, the Vikings have a quarterback that they don't really, really want or isn't the future. Like I don't think I see Darnold going back to Minnesota on a do you think they would sign Darnold like a 3-year deal? Because then it would put J.J. McCarthy then in a tough spot. It's basically signaling not the end, but really putting J.J. McCarthy's career on halt at that point. Darnold, too, himself might be like, I want to go elsewhere and get a long-term contract and come back here for a year and see if we can put something together. And worst case, they bench him and they go out and bring in, worst case next year falls on flat on their face and then J.J. McCarthy takes over.
Yeah, I honestly didn't think of it from that angle. Like they did draft this kid, first round for him to kind of be the franchise. Darnold stepped in and just happened to have a pretty good year and basically exceed expectations at every aspect of it. And we talked about it off air where he wants close to $30 million, and I like Minnesota 2 years, $60 million. Why do that type of thing with J.J. McCarthy? Ready to go, once he rehabs, and then if anything goes wrong with McCarthy, now you got Daniel Jones, which was a big part of them bringing him in. You got that trusted back up with some experience, playoff experience, those type of things. So from the side that I'm looking at, it's like, a guy that's played so good, why would you just let him walk? He's done so much in his 1 year to, again, help this organization reach new heights that they haven't. But then again, when you bring your angle of it, where what was the point of the J.J. McCarthy draft then? It makes no sense to bring Darnold back. So I think I'm going to change my mind. And I think I 100% agree with you. There's no point in bringing him back. I mean, let him go out. He earned his money this year, which is kind of what you want from a bridge type of guy anyways. Just play for a contract. Somebody eventually will sign him. Let him walk. Thank you for everything you did for Minnesota. Let's rock out with JJ next year. See what JJ brings.
Yeah, I agree. And the whole, I don't know. I think the J.J. McCarthy situation is just interesting because, I mean, I don't really know if nobody knows what he's going to be. I mean, I think the Vikings are very high on him. You saw him in that one preseason game. You've seen the preseason clips of him in the against the Raiders that keeps getting played over and over again. That's kind of like the one moment so far in his career. Um, but I think the Vikings would be willing to give him a shot. I think Kevin O'Connell he hasn't, nobody's publicly admitted it, but I think if Kevin O'Connell, deep down inside, probably wants JJ McCarthy to return. How much of that is over the last 2 weeks? I don't know. How much of that is even no matter what happens this season, they're not bringing Darnold back. There could have been that to it as well. But again, I'd still have a hard time if Darnold would have gotten this team to the Super Bowl that they just don't bring him back. Like, there's also a locker room perspective to that as well, where you take a guy away from the locker room like that, it's not a great look. So it'll be interesting. And from the Darnold perspective, you look down some potential landing spots now for him and where he maybe ends up. He definitely lost a couple $1 million in those last 2 weeks. I would say definitely. When you just look down the list, I think there's a couple AFC teams. We just talked about it. You want to maybe throw the Jets in there. If Rodgers doesn't come back or the new GM and head coach doesn't want him back, that maybe Darnold could come back. I would not hold your breath on it. I don't think that's going to happen. I'd be shocked if Darnold returns to the Jets. I just think that ship has kind of sailed. And I also doubt too, there's some Giants fans out there that say, okay, if they can't get a top three, if they can't get one of the Shedeur or Cam Ward in this draft, do you bring in a Darnold and kind of do what the Vikings did? Do you sign him on like a 2-year deal with maybe an option after this year? And worst case scenario, he stinks it up this year, and then you have a top pick next year. It also might be the best possible way for Brian Dable and Joe Shane to remain competitive this year, because they need to be competitive if they want to return in 2026. So what are some destinations? I don't see either of the New York teams happening, but look, I'd listen to it. I'd be on board if you get the right coaching staff and the right offensive coordinator in here with the Jets with Darnold. I just don't think Darnold himself would want to go over that again. I mean, it was so ugly the way it ended here. I mean, they ruined him here. I mean, they took him and completely destroyed him. Pittsburgh's another team. Just any other landing spots for you?
I think Pittsburgh is my probably top destination, and I kind of just reiterate what I kind of was saying off air, where Russ, like that, the thing with Russ is done. The Russ experiment is done, and again, we're in the same boat as Darnold, where you don't want to put it all on Rush. You don't have a lot of weapons, and we spent a lot of time talking about Pittsburgh and their lack of weapons and their, George Pickens. It's so much with Pittsburgh and everything they have going on, but if you don't trust Justin Fields to kind of take over the helm at quarterback quite yet, why not bring in a Darnold? And I actually think the situation for him is kind of ideal. The Jets aspect of it, we were saying, obviously Garrett Wilson being there, if Devontae comes back and Darnold has those two to throw the ball, I mean, that has to be a win for a quarterback, right? You go from Addison and Jefferson right over to Adams and Wilson, okay, that's great. But for a Pittsburgh team that doesn't have that same talent that Minnesota has and that the Jets have, this is a winning organization. We've talked a lot about Mike Tomlin, what Mike Tomlin does. So I think for Darnold, you want to go somewhere that may pay you, somewhere where the expectations for you won't be that high. And I say that because, Pittsburgh has not had a quarterback in there that's been getting them to AFC championships every year. It's actually been one and done, the wild card and you're out. So it's just like the bare minimum basically is hey, just get up to the wild card. You have this defense to do that. Let's go get a few weapons for you to kind of help you out here and there. Let's go out and try to win 11 games and at least just stay competitive inside that division, and then we go from there. And I think that is the ideal spot for him to do it. Not too much pressure, which is kind of crazy considering the history and the market of Pittsburgh. But knowing how that, organization has been since Big Ben left, you just come in here and get us to the wild card. And I think he can do that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's significantly better than what Russell Wilson and Justin Fields provided for them this year. I think Pittsburgh's a great spot for him. And you potentially build some more talent around him. You've already got, George Pickens, like you mentioned. I mean, if you throw Darnold, let me let me pull up the exact comparison. And I know it's a little different. Actually, it's probably better to pull up the comparisons of Steelers quarterbacks combined. If Darnold was the Steelers quarterback, they'd probably still be playing right now. Would you maybe? I don't know. It depends on. I guess maybe let me rephrase that. It depends on. They wouldn't have probably beaten Baltimore, but I think Darnold, the last 4 games of the season, could have found a way to win 1 or 2 of those.
Yeah, I agree.
So I don't think Darnold would have went into Baltimore and won, but I don't think Pittsburgh would have been in that situation to play Baltimore. Darnold probably could have locked up that division. But then again, I mean, he didn't do it in Minnesota. So let's see. So, yeah, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields this season. 21 touchdowns combined, 6 interceptions, 3,607 yards. So Darnold would walk in there immediately and almost double their touchdowns. I mean, 21 touchdowns to 35. So 14 more touchdowns. He does have, 6 more picks. His QBR was 14th. As a team, Darnold also had a passer rating of 102.5. The Steelers quarterbacks had a passer rating of 94.8. So, yeah, he would walk in there right away and be the best guy. And I agree. I think Pittsburgh is the most likely landing spot and probably the best for both sides, for Darnold and Pittsburgh. And who knows, maybe Pittsburgh walks into their future guy, because we are getting to a point with the Steelers where it's like, all right, you got to find somebody. Since Big Ben, we've been Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, Trubisky, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields. There's probably more. I mean, I think even Kyle Allen played a little bit this year. So it is getting to a point where you got to find somebody. And that's the problem with the Steelers, is they are so mediocre right now that they are the most, I guess, would you agree, they are the most mediocre team in the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing impressive. They're not going to,
No.
They're not going to surprise you, but they're going to be good enough to get to the playoffs.
Yeah. It feels like they're as far away to a championship as they are to like being the bottom of the league. Because honestly, this is a team that the last 5 weeks, if you watch the Steelers, they look like a team that's in the bottom of the league. And then you also watch them and they look like one of the better teams in the league. And then they go into Baltimore and lose. So the whole thing with Darnold is there's a possibility there where maybe you walk into something. Darnold is, he'll be 28 in June. Feels like this is kind of his first big opportunity coming up here, where he could get big money and sign with a team and be the guy for the next 3 to 4 years. And maybe that's what the Steelers find. So I think you'd be willing to take that risk and running it back with, I don't know, Russ. I don't see them going after Rodgers, but even like bringing in Rodgers, I'd go Darnold before Rodgers, just because Rodgers is a 1-year thing. Steelers, they can't have this revolving door at quarterback every single season. And that's maybe why the offense has been so bad. So,
I mean, Arthur Smith too. That guy.
Yeah, Arthur. God, it's Arthur's. He is awful. Can I just say, I don't get the love for Arthur Smith around the NFL. I don't. This is a guy that is, and the Jets are interviewing him like this. I don't understand why everyone's obsession with Arthur Smith. He was awful in Atlanta. I never even loved him coming out of Tennessee, to be honest. And now he's getting coaching interviews again, 1 year removed from being a disaster with the Falcons. And now this year with the Steelers, it wasn't any good. And now you're hearing reports that him and Russ weren't getting along. And I mean, what a mess. He's terrible.
If there's 2 guys I do not want touching my offense, it's Arthur Smith and Matt Nagy. I'd rather get, wasn't it Brick Johnson? Is that who it was? Brick Johnson? I'd rather get Brick Johnson to call plays for my offense than to let one of them step inside my facility. But
yeah,
not
I agree. They're horrible, just too outdated. The Steelers offense, we talked about it last week, and I don't want to talk too much about this, but because we do have to move on to other subjects. But the Steelers offense, they're so outdated. It's like literally watching paint dry live. That's what it is. It's horrible. It's a grind. Like as a football fan, it gets you frustrated. It's like slow and sluggish. They're not a fun watch. So Darnold maybe provides a spark there. Outside of that, I mean, maybe Vegas, possibly. Just looking through teams that have a quarterback hole. Maybe Cleveland. I don't see it, but they're a team that will probably draft a quarterback. But who knows? Maybe I don't know. But how much money can they really spend on a quarterback when they're paying Watson all that money? And now he's going to miss next year all over again. I mean, that's got to be one of the worst contracts. Forget NFL history, in sports history. It's got to be.
That is by far the worst contract to ever exist of any sport.
Yeah. 100%. We talked about the Giants in the NFC. Minnesota, obviously, with him now. Who knows? Maybe he still does return. Other than that, I mean, maybe Atlanta, probably not, though. They've got Penix. New Orleans, no, you still got Carr. Nobody really in the NFC West. It feels like it's this. It feels like it's more AFC. It feels like it's going to be the Steelers. It feels like if it's not the Steelers, then it gets interesting. Because then it's okay.
At that point, is he signed as a backup? Because there's not a lot of teams that we kind of think are probably going to draft quarterbacks. So unless it's, again, one of those ones like you just mentioned, Vegas, where you don't draft a quarterback, let's go ahead and sign Darnold.
Yeah.
Draft some weapons, sign some weapons, maybe, but.
Yeah. And who knows, maybe, and I think Darnold's going to look for a long-term deal, but who knows, maybe you get a situation where, let's say the Browns draft a quarterback and maybe if every other option's off the board for Darnold, maybe they sign Darnold and say, you're going to start. We're going to have, let's say, maybe it's Shadur, who I think probably could use I think it's Shadur, and we'll get more into this, but he could probably use some time sitting. I think. I think you can make the case even Cam Ward could probably use some time sitting. I don't think any of these quarterbacks really blow you away as guys that should start week 1 next year, but we'll have those talks, obviously, a lot coming up when draft season really arrives. But maybe he goes to Cleveland and says, all right, here's a 1-year thing. But I don't know. I think that would have to be like an all options else fail because he's going to want a long-term deal. I don't think he's going to want to be a bridge again and have to basically prove himself again. So, and Cleveland, I don't know. Do you love the idea of going to a 3-14 team as trying to build up your value? I don't know if that's necessarily the best play, but
the folks in Cleveland, they say they are just a solid quarterback away from making noise, and it's been some reports from the players. Of course, they're not going to go out there and bash their quarterback, but many of them believe you get us a solid quarterback, we got everything else we need to be good. So maybe if they're kind of believing in what they say and Darnold wants to continue to prove that, why not a Cleveland team with literally zero expectations? But again, long-term deal, I doubt.
Yeah, I agree. So it'll be interesting. The Sam Darnold sweepstakes 2025. Who takes it? All right, let's move on here to most disappointing, most impressive, surprising, however you want to phrase it, teams of the 2025 or 2024 NFL season, as we have 4, 6, 7 NFL games left. That's a little sad. Only 7 games left. 4 today, 2 next week, Super Bowl Sunday. Did you want to start with most impressive? I guess we start with the good.
Yeah, start really good. I mean, 2 of those teams are playing today. Well, this weekend, and I'm going to stick with my first being the Rams.
Yes.
I think I said this last week. This is the Cincinnati Bengals in the NFC. They always seem to start out so slow for whatever reason, kind of figure it out around the bye or during the bye week. Figure out a way to win. Sean McVay is a genius. He is an amazing coach. I'm very surprised on what this Rams team has done, especially with after Aaron Donald retires and you get rid of Jalen Ramsey and some pieces, and people believe this Rams team can never bounce back, never get back to the Super Bowl. You got rid of everything. For them to continue to be successful And they're doing all this while Cooper Kupp is an offensive tackle. I don't think the guy's caught a football in
Yeah.
maybe the past 4 weeks of me watching him play. But, just what the chemistry that Stafford and McVay have, it has been amazing. And as much as I think the Rams have been impressive, it's going to be more impressive, hot take, when they beat the Eagles this week. So
I like the
I
sound of
really
that.
like what the Rams have done.
Yeah, I like the sound of that. I would love to see an Eagles. I'd love to see the Eagles get bounced today or tomorrow. It would be music to everyone's eyes, except Eagles fans. I can't stand the Eagles. They got to be the most hated team outside my division. Definitely.
Yeah.
All right, I agree with that. Rams. I guess I agree with that one. I have Rams on there as well, so I'll go different here so I don't repeat. I'll go Commanders since they're playing today. Commanders very impressive this season. A team that it was funny. I think both of us saw the vision for the Commanders. I remember when we were doing our season prediction video, and I think it was one of us. It might have been me, I think. I was like, they got all these different pieces, and I'm like, 6-11. I was wrong. They were, I think we both saw all the vision and the new ownership and new GM and Adam Peters and Dan Quinn and the potential. I think both of us really like Jaden Daniels. The biggest thing at the next level was just protecting himself. And up to this point, he's done that. He's taken his passing ability, I think, to another level. We all know what he can do with mobility and all that stuff. But I think just really his smarts, his IQ, I feel like has hit another level in the NFL up, in his rookie year that I don't know if many of us, really, really expected. I think what Daniels is so impressive is the completion percentage is just so high. Last week was, had a really big game. This season completed 69% of his passes, 25 touchdowns, right in consideration there for rookie of the year. So I love what the Commanders have done this year. The Commanders are the Lions. The Texans are the teams like for Jets fans like me that give us hope, right? Bad ownership, really bad position. Last year, the Texans, right, couldn't get fans in their building. You look at the Lions, same thing, and they've all turned it around. I'm happy for the Commanders fans. They deserve, a season like this. They haven't gotten one in a while. They've just been sucked in with bad ownership, but they've got good general manager, good head coach leading the way. And while there are a lot of some of those older veteran pieces that we talked about, like being a 2018 All-Pro team, Bobby Wagner's had a very productive season. 132 total tackles, leads the team by a lot. So, even some of these veterans have stepped up. Even, Zach Ertz has made some plays this year, second leading receiver on the team. Daniels, that's been a nice safety blanket option for him. Terry McLaurin's had a really solid season. So you've got a mix of some of that young talent. And I think you got to give credit, too, to the Commanders. They clearly had a vision there of bringing in that veteran talent to kind of be those leaders in the locker room. You even see I think it was after the Tampa Bay game, Bobby Wagner in the locker room. I believe it was that game where he just, everyone's mobbing him. You could tell he's well respected. Just a leader in that room. So they've done a really good job. They've been impressive. They've been a surprise team. They've done a lot. It's been a very, very good year for them. And upset today, who knows? We'll talk about that soon. So who you got next on your list?
As bad as they look for the last 2 weeks of the season, and we spent a lot of time on it already, it's going to have to be the Vikings.
Yeah.
Again, I know 14-3, first round exit. It's not a good look. It's a very bad look. But I mean, you can't put nothing past them. I think as bad as it kind of went, and it's kind of ironic. Your 4 losses on the year, both the Rams and the Lions. The irony of it is something. But as bad as they look, those 2 weeks, I think they still deserve so much credit because again, this is a team where in the Commanders boat where we're just like, okay, maybe 6 wins. Maybe 7 wins, finish last in the division. I don't know if you remember, but we had the Chicago Bears and Caleb Williams finishing higher than the Minnesota Vikings. when we were kind of doing our, preseason stuff, and that obviously was a bad take on both of our part. But Darnold, I mean, you are a career journeyman. You know, you had so much expectation when you were drafted. You've been bounced around. We've talked about different teams like Carolina looking at how his season went. And you're just like, oh, where was this Sam Darnold when we needed him? That Vikings team, I mean, they might not show up in the playoffs, but I think O'Connell and that organization deserve so much credit because in that division, we are obviously know about the Lions and Green Bay, who's also been very good and probably will continue to be very good. For them to be competitive, find a way to get into the playoffs, even though they stunk up Arizona, unfortunately. I mean, still, 14 wins is not easy to come by in the NFL. So I think they were very impressive. They deserve a lot of credit for their season.
Yeah, I agree. You know, it's funny. I actually kind of put the Vikings in both sections.
They're both. They're both on
Yeah.
mine as well.
Yeah, I feel like you could put them in the section of they're really impressive and they had a really very surprise season. I think most of us expected them to have a poor year with Darnold not playing very well and kind of just this year kind of be one of those years where they throw it and then win 6-7 games at most and then just go into next year with JJ McCarthy and turn the page. But that wasn't the case. That perspective, it was a surprise and it was an impressive season. But then you look at the last 2 weeks, and I'm sure if you ask a Vikings fan right now, they're probably going to say disappointing just because of the way it ended yet again with another playoff exit. We talked about that earlier. So I agree. I think you could throw them in both. You can make the strong case for both. In terms of another impressive team, I'll go. Let's see. Where do I want to go? I'll go the Broncos. Even though they got eliminated, I'm going to go with the Broncos. They were probably the biggest team that had the most surprising team that was impressive. I mean, we were making fun of the Broncos all off season. Most people were making fun of the Broncos all off season. Bo Nix, you felt like the weapons around him just weren't they didn't, really, I don't know. I don't know the word, but they didn't impress you. There it is. They didn't impress you much. You had questions about what Bo Nix would even be. They're also playing in a division with Patrick Mahomes, Jim Harbaugh, Justin Herbert, and Andy Reid. We knew the Raiders weren't going to be good, but the Broncos, obviously, they came into the year with, I believe, the second longest playoff drought in the NFL. It didn't go well last year with Sean Payton. You had kind of some questions of Sean Payton and what he can do, and because last year it didn't go well with Russell Wilson. What would he look like with a rookie quarterback? It just, I don't know. There was a lot of things, and then they start 0-2 as well. They start 0-2 and they look terrible. Like Bo Nix, it took him until his third game to have a touchdown pass. They looked awful. And then here we go. Fast forward, a couple weeks or 15 weeks later, and they're 10-7, and they go up in Buffalo and get blown out. But I think it was a really good step in the right direction. I think they were very impressive. I mean, you're talking about a guy in Bo Nix that put up 29 touchdowns this year, almost at the 30 mark, at 3,775 passing yards. I thought Cortland Sutton had a very productive season. Him and Bo Nix really had a very strong connection. I think Marvin Mims did some positive things this year. I think you saw a lot of good things from some young guys, mainly Bo Nix. The defense was probably one of the biggest surprises. You're talking about a defense that last year that was one of the worst in football. And they go out there this year and have a massive season. Nick Bonitto had a huge year. Jonathan Cooper, big year. Zach Allen, big year. I mean, those guys, just in terms of sack numbers, they led the league in sacks as a team. John Franklin Myers. And credit to the front office, too, for making that trade for John Franklin Myers and making some moves and doing things like that. Pat Surtain, of course, really implementing himself as one of the elite cornerbacks in the NFL yet again. So Broncos' future is bright. I think this is a team that they got a road playoff game under their belt. Bo Nix got a playoff game under his belt. The defense struggled a little bit, but I think you add some more pieces. They've got to be better against the run. And you even listen to some Broncos fans and the way they spoke about that game all year. They need to get a little bit bigger up front. They need like a run stuffer. They need a guy that can clog, the interior holes, the A gap to B gap, all that stuff. So they get that type of guy, everybody gets better. It's another year of experience. Sean Payton, we all know what he's capable of as a head coach. Clearly has got, that offense, firing on all cylinders. So I'm going to go Broncos there as another team.
I have an honorable mention I want to kind of throw in there. Record says otherwise, but I'm going to go with the Carolina Panthers. The 5-12 Carolina Panthers is going to be another one for me. I mean, I'm not saying they're on the Detroit Lion Arca thing, how the Lions went 9-8 and it's been just up from there. But I think this Panthers team is going to be very good, in the upcoming years. I mean, probably have a great chance of winning that division next year. I mean, when Bryce Young got benched, it was so much on him and everyone bashed him and how he's such a bust and he's a this, and that. Just for Andy Dalton to step in and only win one game after Bryce Young gets benched, which is quite crazy. But when Bryce Young comes back, that nine game stretch, they played some great football. I know they had 2 blowouts in there, Dallas being one of them. They kind of caught Dallas on a bad time when Dallas was hot on a win streak. And then Tampa, second to last week of the season was another one where they got the doors completely beat off of them. But other than that, Carolina played a lot of great football, even with the losses. A lot of losses were one possession. I think Kansas City came down 3 points, and then they lost to Tampa the first time in overtime off a fumble. Philly came down to Xavier Legette drop. So they played great football against some very good teams. I think this team is going to be very good next year with the right pieces, and we're going to see another year of Legette continue to flourish. Hopefully Chuba Hubbard comes back and is healthy. Chuba Hubbard had a great year, by the way. Defense got better as the year kind of went on. They were giving up almost 35 points for the first 8 weeks of the season, kind of rallied together, started to figure out some things. They got a lot better. I think this Panthers team, depending on what they do, how they go into the draft, how they go into free agency, very winnable division. It's Tampa or nobody at this point, if we're being so honest.
Yeah.
So I think going into next year, if Bryce Young can continue to elevate, and again, I don't know what Rod Wave said to Bryce Young. I think we've talked about that before. I don't know what Rod Wave said to Bryce Young, but it worked. He looked so much better after, returning back to the starting lineup. I think this Panthers team is going to be a, 8, 9, maybe even 10-win team next season. They are definitely in the right path, which is ironic after we spent all offseason bashing them and the city of Charlotte and all those type of things. But I think they're going to be pretty decent. They impressed me.
Yeah. And the bashing was warranted. I mean, it lasted pretty good. I mean, they were 1-7 at one point and they looked terrible. But yeah, they turned it around. I mean, I think one of the best ways to look at their season is, they started 1-7 and they finished, 4-5. They were after that start, they were a 500, almost 500 football team. The biggest thing, to take away is Bryce Young. He felt like him and Dave Canales found something. And I think that's another positive too. You look at some of the young talent on that roster. I also feel like you've got a coach that at least has built a connection with Bryce Young, and it feels like it's got something out of him. Year 1, Frank Reich got nothing out of him. And I think early in the season, you were seeing a lot of what Frank Reich did to that team and did to Bryce Young. You were starting to see that kind of still wear on him a little bit early in the year. However, the development he thought he was going on, Canales has kind of shifted that and got him back on track. So, it feels like they are a little bit of a worse version of what the Lions were in 2022 or 2022, where they finished 9-8. They got, they got hot towards the end of the season because I believe that Lions team was 1-6. So very similar situations. And I remember even talking about it when they got to 1-6. You were thinking to yourself that, and they played all those close games. Even in 2021, they were in all those close games. And in 2022, they were still in all those close games. But it got to a point where when they got to 1-6, it was like, okay, Dan Campbell could talk all this stuff and I'll do all this different stuff. But at the end of the day, we could talk about being close in games. They had 4 wins in their first year and a half. I mean, it was bad, a lot of losing. So, And then they obviously went on that run. They finished the year, 8-2. And everybody was hyping them up going into year 2. I feel like that'll be a similar situation here where, everyone's going to next year, the hype isn't going to be quite what the Lions were last year, but there's going to, 8, 9, maybe 10 wins for the Carolina Panthers, which is crazy to say, but it's where they are. So, all right. You want to move on? Most disappointing here.
Whoa.
I mean, I guess number one, I could start. I'll just go the Jets. The Jets are number one to me. They've got to be the most disappointing team this year, and to be honest, they've got to be one of the most disappointing teams in NFL history, just in terms of the expectations and everything that they put into this season, and all the moves that they made, and all the talent that was supposedly on this roster. For them to finish 5-12, and in the process of doing that, fire your general manager and head coach before the season's even over. It's got to be one of the most, at least in New York sports, it's by far worse than the big three. And the reason I say that is at least the big three, you got to the playoffs, you won a playoff round. This is a team that didn't even get to the playoffs this year with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I think right now we could be possibly talking about the Jets as a disappointing team if they would have lost last weekend in the wild card round. Because to me, you don't trade Aaron Rodgers to get to the playoffs. You trade him to make a deep playoff run and make a Super Bowl. You don't trade him to just get in and maybe win a playoff game. But they didn't even do that. They were 5-12. The season was basically over. Let's be honest. The season was pretty much over at Halloween. Right? That Halloween game against the Texans, they went into that game 2-6. The season was over. Like that Patriots game ended it for the Jets. It ended it. And I said it too. I think after that Broncos game, something happened, whatever it was in the locker room, because they were never the same after that. So you can even make the case the season ended that Broncos game in September. The season was over for like 2 months before it actually officially went over. They've got to be the most disappointing. They're the most disappointing team this season, and they're one of the most disappointing teams in NFL history. It was a same old Jets type of season where you go in with high expectations, none higher though than this year, and it falls flat. And the thing is, there's no more excuses, right? Last year they had the excuse of, Aaron Rodgers got hurt. Well, Aaron Rodgers was healthy this year. He played all 17 games, and they still stunk. So definitely the Jets number one.
Well, I wasn't going to do it. I wasn't going to include them, but I might as well. We're going to throw the Cowboys up there then. I was going to stay away from it. I didn't even have them on the list, but we're going to go with the Cowboys then. It all started when the New Orleans Saints won the Super Bowl in week 2, which they didn't look good after that, ironically. But after the Saints marched into Jerry's World and scored 44 points when it all started. And it's kind of hard to blame the team itself when, you got so many injuries and all these other things. But this goes for the head guy in charge that thought that it wasn't a good idea to sign Derrick Henry. Then it called Aaron Jones. Then it called Josh Jacobs. 2 guys that are known to also just completely destroy the Cowboys every time they play them. We definitely can start there. We can start with not drafting a running back. Instead, let's go with Zeke, who we're going to cut right before the season ends, which made perfect sense.
Yeah.
But I'm not even going to rant and ramble on everything that went wrong. It went wrong when I decided to be born into a Cowboys family, so that's where it kind of all started. If we're being honest, but just 12 straight wins in 3 straight years, just for you to go 7-10. And again, the injuries. After week 9, that's when Prescott was hurt. But I mean, this team looked bad even with Dak Prescott in there. They just like a team that had no fight. They quit after that night, that Falcons game. And I mean, this is a team that I don't think I will ever see win a Super Bowl in my lifetime. So just for them to have all the expectation and you let the Commanders come in there and just completely just step over you in the division, it's bad. It's very bad. Now you can't even figure out what you're going to do with your head coach. You're going to bring McCarthy back. Now you're not going to bring him back. We don't know. That team's so indecisive. Jerry Jones is an idiot. And again, to go from, 12 straight wins, MVP caliber quarterback, actually MVP runner-up quarterback, receiver who just broke every record in franchise, well, for a season in the franchise, and you can't even manage to find a way to get back into the playoffs. That's disappointing. The Dallas Cowboys make me sick.
Yeah, they're definitely disappointing. Definitely would be on my list of most disappointing teams as well. I agree. I think, probably they might get a pass for some just because of the quarterback injury. But as you mentioned, they weren't very good with Dak. So I think doesn't really matter that. I think even with Dak, they probably wouldn't have made the playoffs. They just weren't a very good team. They didn't put enough help around him. I mean, the running back situation, just Jerry Jones just blindly ignoring it was terrible. And especially it adds salt to the wound to see what Derrick Henry's doing. So I agree. I agree with the Cowboys there. There's a lot of most disappointing teams. I feel like that we can go in multiple different directions. I don't know. I don't really want to. Where do I want to go next? I guess I'll go Steelers. I mean, they've got maybe not most disappointing because the thing is, they've kind of done this now for a couple years in a row, really since 2016. That's the last time they won a playoff game. So maybe not most disappointing, but I mean, the fact that you were 8-3 or 10-3, and then you lose 4 in a row, and then you lose 4 in a row to get to 10-7 and lose in the playoff game and don't even show up. I mean, they lost 5 in a row. So you went from 10-3, leading the division, potentially winning the division, to finishing the year overall, including playoffs, 10-8, and you're sitting home right now, yet again watching the divisional round at home. So I would have to go the Steelers. I mean, you can't collapse like that. We could talk about the Vikings and their collapse and losing the final 2 and all that stuff, but the Steelers deserve just as much criticism. We knew, in the Steelers too, we knew that they were not going to go and win a playoff game. We knew they were not going to win last weekend. It's the same story every year with this team where they limp into the playoffs. So maybe that doesn't make them disappointing because it is the same thing every year with them. It's similar to the most impressive teams, saying the Lions are the most impressive. We all knew the Lions were going to be really, really good. I guess we all knew this was going to happen with the Steelers at some point, but I don't know. This year at points felt different. It felt different because they won some games where they were putting up a lot of points. In past years, they were always winning games by defense. There was a stretch there this season where in the regular season, it's the best they looked in a very long time offensively. And then whatever it was, something just happened where December came around, and recently Mike Tomlin's teams just haven't been able to get it done. So Steelers on there for me.
I honestly think I agree. I mean, you say you can't really put it in the disappointing tab because it's the same thing every year.
Yeah.
But when you called it earlier, you said mediocre. It's when do you get over that hump? See it all the time. See it in 2020 where they went 11-0 to start, completely done nothing. At some point, you got to get over that hump. So I think I'm going to agree with you there. Disappointing, but I'm going to stay in the AFC. I'm going to go with the Miami Dolphins. I'm going to stay in your division. I'm going to go with the Dolphins. And again, very similar Dallas way of things where, injuries, Tua, everything with Tua this year. But I just can't really grasp this Dolphins team. Are they actually good? Are they a contender? Or are they mediocre? Are they in the Steelers boat where it's just hey, we're going to win a bunch of games in the regular season. When it gets late, late November, early December, are we going to completely collapse and get into the playoffs and we're a first round exit? And that kind of seemed like it's been the case for the Dolphins for the last 2 years, and 8-9 this year. But this was I feel like the first time in a few seasons where there was no excitement around the Dolphins. It used to be fun to watch Tyreek Hill and watch Tua and watch everything they got going on. Now it's just another team you put on Sunday. And, you just want to get through their 1:00 game so you can watch your team play at 4. There's no excitement. It seems like there's no real direction for this organization right now. You don't know what Tua is going to give you next year. Tyreek Hill seemed like he wants out. I don't know if you've seen him with Antonio Brown, photoshopping his face on Antonio Brown's famous Jet Life Stadium debacle. Tyreek Hill's doing that. quitting mid-game, like middle of the game, last game of the season. Just this seems like a team that they kind of had their moments or their highs with the last 2 years. Is like they don't figure out a way to get over that hump this year. Everything will start crashing down. I think it's starting to crash down for Miami. With the way this division went this year, where no, I don't want to rub more salt in your wounds, but the Jets were completely awful. The Patriots were the Patriots.
Yeah.
It's literally you and the Bills go get it done, and you still can't manage to
Yeah.
go do that. One hadn't even won the division anyways with Buffalo, but to not even keep that division close and just look as pathetic as you look, it's the AFC South, just basically a little north if you kind of think about it, and
Yeah.
then Miami. So they were bad.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's a good way to put it too. Is just how early the Bills wrapped up the division. I think proves that. Just goes to show to prove how disappointing. We all knew the Patriots were going to struggle, but how disappointing Buffalo or Miami and the Jets were, because we went into the year and said that we felt it was Jets, Miami, Buffalo. That's what it felt like. That's felt like the way it was heading. This was finally the year to dethrone the Bills, and no, both teams collapsed. I agree. Dolphins were also on my list. I guess just to skim through some others before we get to some of the game picks. I'd throw the Niners on there. I know they were injury. They had a lot of injuries, but I think that's a team that, I mean, come on now. You go from winning going to the Super Bowl and all that to missing the playoffs. So I know I understand injuries and stuff like that, but that should not be an excuse. They finished 6-11. They went from, I believe, last year they were 13-4. 12-5. 12-5 to 11-6 or 6-11. So significantly worse. You start to have some questions about where they're headed if they need a little bit of a shakeup with that core. It feels like when you make the Super Bowl twice, make a couple title games, and you still can't get over the hump, it feels like the core might be wearing out. So Niners disappointing. I'd also throw the Bengals on there. But the thing with the Bengals is I think it's their defense. I think you talk about Joe Burrow, one of the most impressive, but their defense was awful. So, and that led to the firing of Lou Anarumo, of course. But they're still disappointing. You're talking about a team that's made the playoffs now consistently going into the year, expected them to be back in the race, right? You get Joe Burrow back healthy after last season, and you finish 9-8 and miss the postseason. I think if you would have told us earlier in the year that the Broncos would beat them out for a playoff spot, that would constitute as a disappointing season for the Bengals, even with the Broncos having an impressive year. And the Falcons, too. I mean, not even just the Falcons, just Kirk Cousins, I think, himself. I mean, you talk about most disappointing. He's up there. So any other thoughts on the most disappointing?
Just one more throw there briefly, and that's the Bears. As much talent as they had, and Caleb Williams with, you don't have to punt the ball that much over here. And it seems like he probably had more punt yards than the offense had total yards all season. I know that division was very good, but that Bears team, there's too much talent on that roster for you guys to be this awful. And, obviously if you're losing 6 games with the Lions, Vikings, Packers, you're like, okay, you get it. But it's just the fact of like how bad the offense looked, where there was weeks like Tennessee, for instance, where the defense literally had outscored the offense in terms of touchdowns. So very disappointing for them with all the hype that was kind of surrounding them being on Hard Knocks and all that stuff. 5-12 is not going to get it done.
Yeah, 100%. I'd also throw this one team in there and we'll get the game picks. And maybe not most disappointing, but it felt like a disappointing ending. And that's the Packers. I mean, you talk about a team last year that went 9-8 and, went on the road, beat the Cowboys as a 7 seed last season, wild card round. And then they go into San Francisco and almost should have won the game. Not rookie Jordan Love, but Jordan Love in his first year starting. Then you go this year and you think, okay, year 2 of Love, Packers are a team that's going to be right there with the Lions, fighting now. And then here come the Vikings. This is a Packers team. They were 9-3, and then they finished 11-6. They went 2-3 over the last 5, including losing 2 straight to end the year. And I know last week of the season they played their backups, but still, losing to the Bears at home is not a good way to go out when you consider, the history there and all that stuff. And I know Christian Watson got hurt and Jordan Love wasn't playing really wasn't healthy, had the arm injury against Philly. But I don't know. I think you talk about a 9-8 team last year that won a playoff game, almost won 2, went on the road and won that playoff game. This year, you go 11-6. The way they finished the season, I mean, they finished the season on a 3-game losing streak. We kill the Steelers for losing 5 straight. And then the Packers you could throw in there as well. I mean, then you go on the road and put up 10 points against the Eagles. And I know they had injuries and stuff, but still, I mean, I think you could consider them as a disappointing season. I mean, I think at the beginning of the year, a lot of us probably expected Green Bay to be playing this weekend, and they're not. So, all right, let's get to some game picks, game previews here as we close things out. We'll go in order here. Texans, Chiefs. Texans coming off of just a dominant defensive performance over the Chargers. Justin Herbert looked lost last week, so bad day for him. A Texans team that I think surprised a lot of people. It certainly surprised Rex Ryan. He said that the Texans would be a first round bye for the Chargers. So, they were enjoying the Rex Ryan pack last week. Big win for them. You go into Arrowhead now with a Chiefs team that went 15-2 in the regular season, undefeated at home, a chance to three-peat. It starts today. Keys to the game for this one and prediction.
I love chaos, but it's not going to be today.
Yeah.
If the Texans had obviously Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs, I will go Texans all the way. Texans do cover the 7.5 point spread, though, if that is still the case. Two defenses that have
9 now.
I still think they cover. Two defenses that's played very well as of late. Kansas City's defense played well all year. Houston's defense has played a lot better as of late, like you said. Justin Herbert was unmasked last week, and turns out to be he was not Justin Herbert. He's actually New York Jets Sam Darnold. They found the imposter. But this Texans team, I guess this game script in general, I think it's going to be very low scoring. The Chiefs starters have played, you can almost say 2 weeks. They have not, played a game, obviously resting their starters last week, and the last time they played was the 29th. So, looking at probably just say 2 weeks, near 2 weeks of not playing, how do they come out? Are they going to be rusty coming out the gate? Are they going to be on fire because they're well rested and had so much preparation? You kind of never know these games and teams with these bye weeks. But again, I think Houston's defense has played so well that they're going to keep it close just from the defensive side of things. Don't think this is going to be that high scoring of a game. If I had to pick one, give me Kansas City 24-17. Kansas City is going on to the AFC Championship, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's another one of these games for Houston where if they could force turnovers similar to the way they did last week, and they forced a lot of them this season, they can come away with a win. I just still have some questions about what this offense will look like. Cold weather environment on the road in Arrowhead. Earlier in the year, they went there. It didn't end well. Unfortunately, had the Tank Dell injury in that game, but they lost that game 27-19 where the offense didn't do a whole lot once he went down. They didn't look good there. So I think for the Texans, you've got to find a way to get to Mahomes number one, because their last performance earlier in the year against the Chiefs, they only sacked him once. And I think if you could force turnovers, that's a big deal. I also think it's important for Houston offensively, not only just, through the air and stuff to have some success, but on the ground. If they can get the ground game going with Joe Mixon, because they did last week, 106 yards last week, over 4 yards a carry and a touchdown. If they can get the ground game going with Joe Mixon, I think is key early in this game. On the road, get the offense settled in, run Mixon, early on and try and kind of wear the Chiefs defense down, set the tone a little bit. early in that game, I think is important. And for Kansas City, I think it's pretty obvious what they've got to do, right? It's, Mahomes working his magic, and this defense, I also thinking making life miserable for CJ Stroud. So I do think the Texans actually cover this as well. I think they win or lose, but cover. So I think the line, it was 7.5. I think it's 9. So I guess Texans plus 9. I think the Chiefs will win by, I don't know, 27-20, let's say, something like that. I think it'll be close early in the game, and I think late Chiefs will pull away, maybe force a turnover. We know how Kansas City does it. They'll get some voodoo magic and start to pull away in this game. So I'll take the Chiefs to win. I hope I'm wrong. I would love chaos. I would love to see Houston, D'Amico Ryans, and CJ Stroud go to the title game. Probably something not many people saw coming with the way the regular season went for them. So we'll see if that happens. But give me Kansas City. I just think Texans a little outmatched here on the road in a very tough environment. Game number 2 here tonight. Lions, Commanders, Jaden Daniels, Dan Quinn, and the Washington Commanders. Another road game, fresh off a victory last week over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in thrilling style with a doink that goes in to win it. Do we see an upset here? What are your thoughts on this one?
I don't. Unfortunately, I don't. I don't even care about the real game. I don't care about Jaden Daniels and the Lions defense. I'm here for Cliff Kingsbury and Aaron Glenn. That's what I'm here for. But seriously, I don't see an upset. I just think this Lions team, everything is kind of going their way. And again, it's kind of that Kansas City. Actually, I lied. I'm not even going to say that. I lied. I was going to say, is it going to be that Kansas City angle of things with them being rusty and this, and that? But I think that last week against Minnesota was such a playoff experience-like game with so much implication that they're kind of going to carry that over from, that last game to today. And I just think this is the Lions' year. I mean, we both predicted them to make the Super Bowl. So who would I be to go against my pick all of a sudden? I just think the rookie doesn't get it done. Not today. The Lions' defense has been very unpredictable, but better. So, but I think this is one of those games where not really let Jaden Daniels completely just like spread them with his legs. They're kind of going to lock in with Jaden Daniels. Also, that Commanders' defense is obviously not that good, even though they kind of held Tampa in check last week. But this is a different monster we're talking about in Detroit. Give me the Lions. Give me the Lions today. I honestly think this is going to be very high scoring. I think the Lions win this game by at least 2 possessions. So give me 37-24 Lions.
I like it. Yeah, I think it's going to be high scoring as well, actually. I could definitely see that. It feels like the Lions just playing a lot of those games where it's high scoring. I think the Lions win at 31-21, 31-20, something like that. I could see. It does feel like maybe one of these games where Washington starts quick and you kind of thinking, okay, do we have an upset here? But then again, just when you get a young team like this in an environment like Detroit against the Lions team that is now experienced, obviously a team with a ton of talent, it feels like they'll start to pull away late. So I think that's what happens. I think you do go into halftime in this one relatively tight, maybe 14-10, 17-13, something like that, where the Commanders are hanging around, but I think the Lions will pull away late. In terms of Washington, I think one of the things that has been so impressive, of course, which we've talked about a lot about with Daniels, is just his ability to complete a high number of his passes. And I'm intrigued just in an environment like this, how he looks through the air. Loud environment, tough place to play, good defense. I am intrigued. I'm also kind of intrigued to see if Washington and really any team in the playoffs, how willing they are, and this will be the interesting battle between Aaron Glenn and Cliff Kingsbury, how willing they are to take shots, because this is a Lions defense that has been so injured all year. And you do start to wonder how much longer it can last with guys that they've picked up off the side of the street of playing at this level. You do start to wonder when a team will start to really exploit, their missing pieces on defense. So I am wondering if the Commanders will try and do that, understand they're the underdog and kind of go in there and take some risks and see if they can kind of expose this Lions defense that has been able to kind of scotch tape something together despite all the injuries that they have on that team. So that'll be something to look for, if you want to try and kind of unleash Daniels and all that stuff. In terms of the Lions, I mean, look, it's, it'll be interesting to see what David Montgomery looks like in his return, him and Jahmyr Gibbs. How much of Montgomery do you see? But at the end of the day, I mean, you got to win this game, right? They've got bigger fish to fry. They've got Super Bowl on their minds. They should be able to come in here and they should be able to dominate. And not, I shouldn't say dominate, but win. This should be a game where, fourth quarter, 8 minutes left, 7 minutes left, they're going to win. And I think that's what needs to happen for Detroit. See what Jared Goff looks like, another opportunity to kind of build his legacy in the playoffs here with Detroit. So I'll go Lions as well, 31-20. It's an uphill battle for a 6 seed to go in there and beat a team like that. So give me the Lions as well.
And you also answered my question. I was trying to see if David Montgomery is actually playing. I didn't know if it's one of those, the Rodgers thing last year. Hey, I could be back by such and such timeline. And it's not a yes. I've not seen a confirmed yes, but I have not seen a no either. So I think he is playing today. That's going to be such a big difference. Even more reason to give me the Lions.
Yeah, it's the same thing too with Aiden Hutchinson, right? He's saying, "Oh, I'm going to come back by the Super Bowl or whatever if they get there." So, they're gonna assemble like they're all these injured guys are going to be like the wrestling meme of the guy getting up out of the chair. That's what it's all going to be like. Yeah. All right, let's move on. Eagles Rams, 3:00 Sunday, one of two Sunday games. It's man, how great it would be to see the Rams. Were they? I guess technically, well, no, last week they were the favorites. So pull off the upset here against the Eagles on the road in Philly in front of that garbage fan base. Thoughts on this one?
I'm going with pure hate on this one. I'm going with the Rams. I have this feeling this is going to be a type of game. We talked about Sean McVay and his preparation going into games. Saquon Barkley is not going to beat the Rams this week. It's going to have to be on the arm of Jalen Hurts to beat the Rams this week, and I just don't think he gets it done. It's already been talked this early this season with A.J. Brown, who also was so frustrated, by the way, he had to read a book on the sideline instead of, throwing the helmet, punching the kicker's net, whatever OBJ used to do back in, his days of frustration.
Yeah.
A.J. Brown had to read a book on the sideline because he was so frustrated with not getting the ball. And that says a lot about that connection with, quarterback, wide receiver. But it's all right. They can build that connection in Cancun starting next week. Give me the Rams to beat the Eagles this upcoming week. And when they do, when the Rams beat the Eagles tomorrow, probably Super Bowl, even if they don't make it, I will be on here with a Puka Nacua name and number T because the Rams will forever be in my debt. I like the Rams.
A little Puka Nacua action. It's funny. Out of all the upsets that could happen this weekend, and outside of the Bills-Ravens game, which we'll get to because that's such a 50-50 game, I think it would be the Rams going on the road in Philly. I think the Rams have the best shot to go on the road this weekend outside of the Bills-Ravens to win. Texans, Commanders, Rams. If you would have told me there's a team to do it, it'd be the Rams. It's going to be Sean McVay and them. I guess I'm going to go some biased as well. I'm going to take the Rams in this one. Give me the Rams. I think last week what they were able to do, of course, locking up that Vikings receiving core, locking up that Vikings passing attack, and really locking up, Sam Darnold and sacking him 9 times was huge. And I think early in this game, if the Rams roadmap to victory, right? You just mentioned A.J. Brown reading the book. It would be early in this game, get to Hurts and cause havoc for that passing offense. Because once that passing offense starts to struggle, everything kind of seems to go downhill a little bit there for Philly. Obviously, you've got to be able to contain Saquon and what he brings to the table, but you've got a lot of drama. Again, here we go. Here we go with the Eagles again. They're a 2 seed, and they've got drama like they're a 5-win team. It's ridiculous. So here we are again. A.J. Brown, maybe he'll have 2 books on the sideline this time. He'll be doing a little dual reading. Maybe he'll throw on, I don't know, a Netflix show or something. But I think it's early in this game. If you want to get the Eagles and A.J. Brown and all that stuff off their game, you do what you did to the Vikings last week, and you are all over Jalen Hurts, and you're locking up in the secondary, and you're basically forcing just Saquon Barkley to beat you. That's it. And I like the Rams' chances if they do that, because the defense looked really good, and they've been really good, and they've been hot. And I trust Sean McVay in these type of environments. As for Philly, you've got to be able to get the passing attack going early in this game. You have to. If A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts are at halftime, you've got 2 targets to A.J. Brown, there's going to be problems. So give me the Rams. I didn't love what I saw from the Eagles offense last week. A lot of it was just the Packers playing so poorly. So give me the Rams in this one as well. I'm going to take the Rams. Jeez.
I do want to throw one more thing in there. I'm sorry. I'll get to that after.
Yeah, 23-17 Rams. Defense plays well, offense does enough, and they move on to the title game.
Give me 27-20 Rams.
I like it.
But I said it earlier, jokingly, about Cooper Kupp being an offensive tackle. I mean, this Philly defense is good. I hate to admit it, give any props to Philly. 1 catch for 29 yards is not going to get it done. I mean, Puka Nacua cannot get it done by himself.
Yeah.
I don't know what Cooper Kupp possibly did to Matt Stafford, but they need to squash it, figure it out, and they need to find ways to get the guy who, by the way, just won the Triple Crown, I believe, 3 years ago. He still knows how to play football pretty well.
Yeah.
So they need to figure out how to get the ball in his hands, because Nakua's not going to do it by himself.
100% agree. That's a great point. They've got to find a way to get Cooper Kupp involved if they want any chance in that one as well. And I will also say this too. Everyone talks about Saquon Barkley and what he brings to the table, and I'm not doubting that. But the Rams too got a pretty good running back in their own with Kyren Williams, a guy you got to look for. So another name tomorrow where, again, maybe early in that game, try and establish the run, set the tone a little bit, right? A warm weather team in a cold weather environment. So look for him as well. All right. Probably the game of the weekend, maybe the game of the playoffs. And this is, I just got to say, why it's so crucial in getting the 1 seed for Kansas City, because now you get to see the Ravens and the Bills basically beat each other up tomorrow night. And then you get to play the winner of that after that, next week. And who knows, maybe the Texans, I think the Texans will make it competitive today, but you should be able to beat the Texans by a touchdown. It shouldn't be a nail-biting overtime game. You should be able to beat them by a touchdown, take care of business, and go into next week, and then watch the Bills and the Ravens basically lay it all on the line tomorrow night. It's funny. ESPN Analytics Predictor had a 50-50 between these two teams. Now it's slid slightly 50.3 Bills to 49.7 Ravens. This feels like an AFC Championship game that's happening in the divisional round. 2 quarterbacks that have a lot on the line here, right? Both guys that their legacy kind of has been dampered by postseason exits, whether it's Lamar, whether it's Allen. They've both haven't been able to get it done. Tomorrow night, they both face off against each other. A massive game there between the two. What do you got heading into this one?
You're watching a TV show. I don't know. I'm going to use like Flash as an example. You're watching a TV show like Flash, and you get through 12, 13, 14 episodes, and you get to 15, and it's Flash and that final villain. They finally meet each other, and it's just going to be, a great what may happen. That is this game for me tomorrow. It's just 2 boss fights on the field, and I mean, winner of this game goes to the Super Bowl. I honestly don't think Kansas City is going to beat either one of these teams. If Houston finds a way to win, I mean, whoever wins this game, they might as well start packing for New Orleans. I hate to look past Houston, especially not one but two bye weeks. But if Houston wins today, whoever wins this Baltimore and Bills games, go ahead and start booking flights for New Orleans.
Yeah.
But winner of this game is going to the Super Bowl. I think both of them beat Kansas City. I feel like that luck eventually runs out. And I know you have mentioned it more than anybody, where you feel like Buffalo specifically, I'm on the Ravens angle of it, where it's just like, this has to be the year. Either Lamar or Josh Allen, this has to be the year they figure out, they get over that Patrick Mahomes kryptonite, and they find a way to get to the Super Bowl. As far as a winner, I don't know. I don't know. You want to come into this game and just like, Buffalo's going to stop Derrick Henry, but I feel like there is no stopping Derrick Henry. That's kind of the thing. But Lamar has everything he kind of needs right now, where all the pressure is off of him, and it's let the others around you eat, and then when eventually like, hey, I need to go out and make a few plays, I can do that. Buffalo's side of things, it's still Josh Allen. Josh Allen has to make the plays. Everything relies on the shoulders of Josh Allen. Ravens defense has been, I give them the edge over Buffalo. I give the edge to the defense. I give the edge to Baltimore. I also give the edge of offense over to Baltimore. But I just feel there's something in me, just Buffalo at this point, where it's just like, this game's going to be a lot closer. They're not going to kind of get walked over. But I'm going Ravens. I don't know if this is considered an upset, but give me the Ravens tomorrow, and I think the Ravens eventually go on to win the Super Bowl. This is the year they do it.
Yeah, the Ravens right now are 1-point favorites, but I think whoever you pick, it kind of is like an upset, honestly. You can make a strong case for the Ravens and the Bills beat them. I would say Ravens, even though they're the betting odds favorites, are more the upset because they are the lower seed and they're going on the road. So I do consider that. I'm right there with you. You just watch this Bills team play, and they've been so dominant. They're playing so well as a team right now. They're spreading the ball around. Allen's just Superman right now with what he's been doing, putting the team on his back. Looked great last week again. It just feels like you can make the case for both these teams. This is their year. And I've said it all along. I think the Bills will get to the Super Bowl, but I don't know. There's also that part of you as well where it's like the Ravens, what Lamar's done this season, Derrick Henry, and I know it was a while ago. I know it was week 4. But this is a Ravens team that has already destroyed Buffalo earlier in the year. And I think we've just gone to a point. I agree with you. I do feel like the winner of this game, you could very well make the case, could beat Kansas City next week and go to the Super Bowl. I just think right now where we are with Baltimore, that the duo and the read options with him and Lamar are so tough right now for teams to figure out. I think this is a game where the Ravens just run all over them. I do. And this is a Bills team that's not very good at stopping the run. They haven't been all year. That's been one of their weaknesses, is stopping the run. And we saw it in that game against the Ravens earlier in the year where they struggled against the run. I want to pull up. I'm trying to pull up the statistics on where the Bills actually ranked, but I'm only getting the postseason numbers. Let me see. Regular season. Let's see. Defensive leaders. Bills regular season. Anyway, I can't. It's on postseason. Anyway, they were like, actually, here we go. They were like 13th against the run because the Jets finished what? 15th. So the Bills were like 12th. So I guess they were above average, but I don't know. The Jets, I would say, were a lot worse than 15th. They were a lot worse than average against the run. But my point is the Bills this season against Derrick Henry and Lamar had major struggles, right? 199 yards, 200 yards for Derrick Henry, and an extra 54 and a touchdown for Lamar. So this was a team last week against the Steelers that ran 15 times in a row. 15 times in a row, and the Steelers had no answer. So I like the Ravens in this one. I do. There's a lot of pressure on both these teams. There's a lot of pressure on both these quarterbacks. And as much as we talk about both these quarterbacks, I feel like it's going to come down to Derrick Henry and that dominant run, his dominant self. And they kind of run away with this one. No pun intended. But give me the Ravens. Let me see. Ravens 27-24. I'm sorry to the Bills fans, but another heartbreaker in Buffalo.
Well, to be specific, Buffalo was 12th in rush defense.
That's not horrible. It's probably better than I expected, but
it's not horrible. But when you look at the rest of the playoff teams, that is actually second to last. Washington being last. The Washington was 30th in run defense. Oh my goodness, what Jahmyr Gibbs is going to do today. Let's see.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
scoring angles.
The Ravens would have the best run defense, actually. And that could be something. Yeah, we talk all about the quarterbacks in this one and Lamar and Josh Allen, but it could be kind of that battle between Derrick Henry and James Cook. Who can run the ball better? And I think when it comes down to it, the Ravens are the best team in the NFL right now with running the football. And they also could stop the run. So you talk about if they can take the passing game out, which that's another thing that's interesting is like the Ravens secondary's had some problems this year. So you do kind of wonder that if the Bills come out throwing in this one and come out kind of airing it out and kind of take those chunk plays and that way, while the Ravens are more of that methodical, just run down your throat, wear you down type of approach. So you could see two different types of approach in this one.
Well, for actually, this is kind of interesting to even look at. I mean, Houston and Kansas City, you get two teams that were top 10 in total defense meeting up with each other. And then Baltimore was at 10 total defense. Buffalo was at 17, so middle of the pack. But again, they've been playing so much better as of lately. This is going to come down to which defense honestly probably gets a stop or two, maybe a turnover or two. Yeah, I think so. And you gave your score prediction. Where were you at?
27-24. I feel like that's been like the typical Bills painful playoff score exit. So
I think I'm going to go with that. I think I like 27-24. Hopefully it doesn't come down to, a Bills missed field goal to tie it, or win it, which is just history.
I would be so on board with that. I mean, if Tyler Bass misses another kick, I would be so on board with that. Honestly, I want to see it. Give me Tyler Bass. What am I talking about? Tyler Bass staring into the abyss and missing a 45-yarder or something.
So Justin Tucker's actually looked a little bit washed as kind of the season went on. So I honestly think we propose this. Game goes to overtime. No offenses touch the field.
Just the kickoff.
Both kickers, 50-yard field goals. You get 10 attempts. And, whoever makes the most of those 50-yard – actually, we're going to say 6 attempts. Whoever makes the most of those 6 attempts, that is who wins that game. And they both might find a way to go 1-5 kicking field goals. But all in all, give me the Ravens to win this one and Ravens Super Bowl. Ravens-Lions Super Bowl.
Yeah. I agree. This is it. I've said Bills all along, but I'm going Ravens, and I'm rooting for the Ravens too. Lamar, Derrick Henry go into Orchard Park and just run all over them, please. It would be hilarious. It'd be hilarious. All right. Any closing thoughts?
Enjoy our football. National championship is on Monday night as well, so a lot of great football to be played. I'm excited. Who are you, Notre Dame or Ohio State this week? Which way you swaying?
Notre Dame.
I'm gonna go Notre Dame as well.
Yeah. Marcus Freeman trade.
Yeah. Notre Dame as well.
All righty, that'll do it. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the games today, games tomorrow. College football national championship, like you said, on Monday. And we'll talk to you guys next week as we preview Championship Sunday and the right to go to the Super Bowl. So enjoy your week, and we'll talk to you next week.